Welcome, everybody, to Saturday, August 3rd, Corridor Conversations. As most of you know, we put on these sessions typically the last Saturday of every month. We're sponsored by Hyattsville Aging in Place, University Park Helping Hands, College Park Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and Explorations on Aging. And I think this is our third or fourth year. Before COVID, we were in person, but we found that the Zoom works equally as well. And just to mention that we are doing two Carter conversations in August, and so keep your calendar open for August 24th. We will be putting that information out next week, but it will be also from the University of Maryland. Craig Keir will do they've started an initiative of Arts for All. And so they're involving the community and the scientific community with arts and humanities. So that should also be very interesting. But anyway, let's get to today. We're going to talk about ice cream. And I hope that you have some in your freezer. We're delighted to welcome Dr. Varner with us today. He was born and raised, coincidentally, on a dairy farm in Minnesota. He received a BS degree with distinction in animal science from the University of Minnesota. His master's is in animal sciences from Washington State University, and his PhD. Oops, the print gets real small here. Excuse me. His PhD is in animal physiology from North Carolina State University. He joined the faculty at the University of Maryland in 1981 as assistant professor and extension dairy scientist, and remained at Maryland until his retirement in December of 2011. He was a visiting professor and with the veterinary faculty at Utrecht University in the Netherlands, and directed some graduate programs there. So he is officially retired, but sort of going back to work. Anyway, welcome, Dr. Varner.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I'm switching over to my slides here, make sure that this works. Marianne gave a short introduction to me. I had to laugh when Lisa was talking, or somebody was talking about driving through Germany. Maybe it was Dr. Siegel. And this was in '92 when I did that sabbatical that you were describing there. It's when the borders opened up. So we were driving from the Netherlands into Germany to go to Cologne. And the point of this story was we came up to the border station, and all of my experiences had been, you stopped and did whatever they said at the border. Be ready to show your passport, etc. And about 6 months after that, the borders opened for the whole EU. And so the point of the story was they abandoned border controls 6 months early. So we pulled up and stopped there, and my wife was driving, and we pulled up and stopped, and no one was there except for a hitchhiker. And finally, the hitchhiker, people behind us are backing up and beeping at us. And I said, don't go, you don't get in trouble at the border. And finally, the hitchhiker waved us through. And so that's the only time I've gone through a border control and been waved through by a hitchhiker. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Route 1 corridor, a little about the University of Maryland history because they're so related. A little bit about ice cream history. We'll go back to the Italians again. A bit about the Maryland dairy industry, various aspects of UMD activity, and finally some current aspects of that. The corridor, the Route 1 corridor, is on land of the Piscataway people. And the university has decided to honor the Piscataway people in a variety of different ways. One of the keys of those, or the corridor, the Piscataway people were north of the Potomac River. And so the state of Maryland in 2012 recognized that as a legitimate people of the Algonquin tribe. And so one of the ways they've done that is by an acknowledgement. And you can read this along. I'm going to read it to you. Every community owes its existence and strength to the generations before them around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy into making the history that led to this moment. Truth and acknowledgement are critical in building mutual respect and connections across all barriers of heritage and difference. So we, this is the university, acknowledge the truth that is often buried. We're on the ancestral lands of those Piscataway people who are the ancestral stewards of this sacred land, and it is their historical responsibility to advocate for the four-legged and the winged and those who crawl and those who swim. They remind us that clean air and pristine waterways are essential to all life. And this land acknowledgement is a vocal reminder for each of us as two-leggeds to ensure our physical environment is in the condition that we inherited it for the health and prosperity of future generations. I looked through and thought about the Route 1 corridor, and this seemed appropriate for that. This is the newest dining hall on campus, Hyattsville Dining Hall. I'll only say that once. And it's the first new dining hall in decades, and it's in a heritage community with 2 new dorms. They have 11 different service stations with various different kinds of food options, including at times native recipes. And this is a picture of this mural is called the Three Sisters. The name Hyattsville means a place to go eat. And it honors the Piscataway people with art and history. In this particular people, it recognizes maize or corn, beans, and squash, which were keys to their approach. In 1856, the Maryland Agricultural College was chartered by Charles Calvert. He purchased 420 acres of Riverdale's plantation, also known as Riverdale and the Riverdale Mansion. In 1862, their first degree was awarded and President Lincoln signed the Morrill Land Grant Act. In 1864, it became the Land Grant College in Maryland. The Civil War influenced our campus. It was occupied twice, first by Union and then by Confederate troops. It got into real financial problems. And in 1866, the state assumed half ownership of the college and full control in 1916 and has been the University of Maryland since then. This, I think we'll be able to do this. If you can see that road that I'm kind of tracing over, that is Route 1. That's the corridor. And this is from 1938. This building here, and you'll see it a little later, is Turner Hall. And Rossborough Inn is here. Some of you recognize some of the other buildings. This is gone and replaced by others. And let's see, what other important, this building up here is Morrill Hall, for those of you who are familiar with campus. Now, let's come back and talk about the history of ice cream for a second. The origins are thought to go back to the 2nd century BC. Cream ice was in England and in Italy in the 16th century, and in 1660 became available to the public. In those days, you needed ice to make that, and not everybody could have ice except in the winter. And having ice storage and keeping things cold, that was a that was a part of the wealthy, review of the wealthy. In America, the first account was by the Maryland governor, Bladen, in 1744. Mount Vernon, also on the Route 1 corridor, if you go further south, listed pewter ice cream pots in their inventory. And manufacturing of ice cream on a commercial basis was started by Jacob Fussell in Baltimore in 1851. And so ice cream really has a long tradition to the state. There's many myths about the origins of ice cream. One of the things we do know is that Catherine de Medici introduced the French to ice cream. That gelato she brought to that. Lisa, she brought that over that time. And if you were in Florence, that family name is the wealthy family there in Florence. There is an important myth about University of Maryland ice cream. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And first, though, I want to talk about the dairy industry in Maryland. And there's a long history. Why does Maryland have a dairy industry? Why does it? Why did it? And it made economic sense in the time, especially from the days when milk was delivered, milk and dairy products were delivered to your front door. And Baltimore and Washington and Philadelphia all were large cities and large sales markets. And since you could not transport milk very far, those days they did it in cans, in 10-gallon cans. You needed to have the cows close to the market. Frederick was about as far west and away from Baltimore and Washington and Philadelphia as we went. Currently, there's about 41,000 cows still left in Maryland and about 310 herds, according to the latest USDA ag statistics. Over the last 50 years, consumption of fluid milk is down 20%. You would know that by my refrigerator, but fluid milk consumption is down. Ice cream consumption is up 20%. Butter is up 70%. I don't know what all that's due to, cooking at home or the cooking shows on TV that say all is better with more butter. And cheese is up 420% cheese consumption, and that's primarily due to pizza and consumption of pizza. Again, this is that campus in 38, and that's Turner Hall, which really doesn't look all that different. There's a sign in front advertising sales of ice cream, butter, and milk for those going by in the 30s. The University of Maryland began producing ice cream in 1924. Thus, we've been doing it 100 years. They also sold milk, butter, and cottage cheese. In those times, the milk was from the cows on campus. And if you remember back to the land grant days, a large emphasis was placed on having a place for people to go to universities that focused on things other than what we now think of as elite private universities did. Things that were more practical, so engineering, agriculture, those kinds of things. The elite privates focused on religion or law or music or those kinds of things. Now that differentiation has gone by the wayside, but that was an emphasis behind why there was a dairy herd on campus, to give students opportunities to work with cows there, to have milk, butter, cottage cheese, ice cream for the students, and the local area and to teach them how to process that. I found that 1926, 75% of the customers to the dairy sales room in Turner Hall bought that scoop of ice cream. This is Turner Hall today and was the home of the dairy sales room and manufacturing plant until 2014. There's an example of that. Lots of those kinds of things. That hot fudge warmer there was still around in the 80s and 90s when I would go there often. I'm guessing this is, I don't know, what's that look like? The 60s, perhaps? Late 50s, maybe? This is how that looked right before it moved up to the student union. This is an administrative area and welcome center at the university now. The university, the pioneer of ice cream at the university is Wendell Arbuckle. He got his PhD in 1940. He was a faculty member at Texas A&M University, NC State, and then came to University of Maryland. He wrote the seminal book, Ice Cream, the first edition in 1966. It was for both college students and ice cream manufacturers. He contributed to 5 editions, and now 2 more have been done by a former co-author. He also wrote the Ice Cream Service Handbook for retailers, and his research on how to create flavors, what was important in manufacturing, that really made a difference for the entire United States and world. He also published a small book, Ice Cream Recipes and Formulas, and it was completed by his wife, Ruth Arbuckle, before or after he passed away. This is still available online in places like Etsy and that kind of stuff. He was known as Mr. Ice Cream, Dr. Arbuckle was. And one of the key things he did was he held ice cream short course for the industry every year. It got, after he left Penn State and the University of Maryland, traded off where 1 year to be at Penn State and 1 year at Maryland, did the ice cream short course. And it was 2 brothers who were at Penn State and here, and they did those and continued on with that work after Dr. Arbuckle retired. There's a copy of his book, the 4th edition of his book. Now, the myth of University of Maryland ice cream, it hasn't been made from milk from the campus cows since the 60s. We decided at that time, they decided at that time, to purchase ice cream mix from a local milk cooperative, and we just sold our milk to that cooperative. So I suppose you could say a little of our milk came from that. The university moved our campus cows up to the University of Maryland Clarksville facility near Ellicott City in the late 1980s. I had the privilege of doing the last research trial with those cows on campus before they left, and they reached a cooperative agreement for research with Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. A shortened version of ice cream, not the recipes, but the book was developed by Dr. Arbuckle's wife, and it's now online. It does have a few recipes in, but isn't the focus of that. So if you're interested, there's the URL. The University of Maryland ice cream shop is ranked highly by various sources. Great Value Colleges ranked the top 50 ice cream shops in college towns across the US. The University of Maryland ranked second in the US in that. As I was going through that list, I was not shocked, but not dismayed, but not thrilled that I had been to more than half of those college ice cream shops during my time in visiting those. The tradition for dairy science and animal science meetings was to hold them on university campuses. So we'd go to a Michigan State or a Penn State or a Cornell or an NC State or Washington State or whatever. And so going to the ice cream shop on campus was always one of those. Washingtonian, the magazine, ranked ice cream shops all over the DC area over the years. And University of Maryland ranked first in one of those rankings. Now, remember I said we did an ice cream short course on campus. The faculty member who did that is Dr. Scott Rankin. You'll hear about him in a minute. But the point of the story was the focus on that ice cream workshop. And so employees from like Giant and Safeway and those kinds of places would send their people there for training. And Dr. Rankin was showing, well, what's the difference between having different fat levels in ice cream and different quality levels of ingredients? So they used various different qualities of vanilla, for example, and they made vanilla ice cream. Well, by coincidence, you make up these ice cream flavors, and they're good quality. So they were selling them in the dairy there on Turner Hall. And by coincidence, we think the Washingtonian tasters came in and got some of that high-fat, top quality vanilla in their tasting and just blew out everybody else because of that. There are 2 dairy training courses these days. The University of Wisconsin with Dr. Scott Rankin, who did the one at Maryland. At that URL, you can go and see theirs. These days, Penn State focuses their training courses on cultured products, yogurt and buttermilk and cheese and those kinds of things. University of Maryland ice cream right now does about 24 different flavors. They do some specialty ones. They churn about 10,000 gallons of ice cream per year, and they do 14% butterfat. Now you go to the grocery store and look at the high quality ice cream, it's 9 to 10%. And so that's part of the reason why Marianne wants to do really well on the quiz. So she gets a coupon for a free scoop of ice cream because it's 14% butterfat. The Adele Stamp Union is now host to ice cream sales at the university. It's not made there, it's made in the dining services facility. They took that equipment out of the Turner Hall and moved it into one of their facilities. And you can see the dairy there. It's busiest times. I would not suggest going on National History Day competition. Those of you who live around the Route 1 corridor maybe know that competition and the tremendous amount of traffic around campus and around Route 1 and College Park that day. Maryland Day is busy also. That's really not Maryland Day. That's really Ag Day, and which is the last Saturday in April. By the way, the 100th Ag Day will be coming up next year. This will come back to that. The president of the university at the time, Britt Kerwin, wanted to have an open house for campus. And his secretary was Sapienza Baron, later Baron, and then Sapienza Majeski. She's the wife of a faculty member, late faculty member in our department here in animal sciences. She said, well, why don't you have it on Ag Day? They always have 10 or 15,000 people come. And so you'll have a crowd. And so Maryland Day has now been going for 20 plus years. And I think if they have it on really good days, really good weather days, there's 60 or 70,000 people. So you don't want to go buy your ice cream that day. And early in fall semester is not a good day. They make celebratory flavors created like, and this was my favorite one here, Chesapeake Wild Berry Ripple that they made in '84 for the 350th anniversary of the state's establishment. That was a fantastic ice cream. They kept around for a few years, but that was a fantastic one. These are the premium flavors. They're doing it. These days, they try to feature some local example of local famous people. So Kathy Reese, anybody know who that is? Yeah, Kathy Reese is the lauded coach of the women's field hockey team. Let's see, I don't remember who Lori is. Sasho is the soccer coach. Willard's Full Court Press, that's the basketball coach. Brenda's Peanut Butter Freeze is for Brenda Freeze, the women's basketball coach. And you see Sapienza. Well, they named an ice cream flavor after her when she retired from the president's office. I'll come back to that in a second. And they are also bringing back some popular flavors. Dr. Arbuckle's favorite flavor was Arbuckle Blues, a blueberry base, vanilla cookie pieces, and cream. And I've never had that. I would love to try that. This is a photo of what that looks like with vanilla wafers and blueberry ice cream. Yummy. Sapienza, her ice cream is creamy rich. You can read what's in there yourself. That's one of their most popular flavors. I think that's their second most popular flavor of theirs. Last time I did scouting up on campus, that was my treat there. They can, if you're having an event on campus, you can have the dairy scoop you choose your flavors and your style of service and rent the cart, and they'll come to your meeting room there in the student union for you. So some trends in ice cream consumption. There's some decrease in full fat ice cream, percentage decrease. However, there's a dramatic increase in smaller containers and smaller portions. Some people are calling that the GLP-1, the Ozempic and Wegovy effect, where people can handle the ice cream because of administering those medicines, which were developed originally for diabetics like me, but they decrease body weight, and so people are eating more ice cream, but smaller portions. There's a scientific study on ice cream supplemented with antioxidants. So if you like dark chocolate with dark cocoa powder, hazelnut, or green tea extracts, and they compared that to chocolate ice cream, in the Journal of Nutrition in 2017, they found that there was improved vascular function and physical performance through reduced oxidative stress. So ice cream can be good for you. Now, if my wife is from a dairy farm in Minnesota, And I'm from a dairy farm in Minnesota, and we grew up thinking that ice cream was medicinal. Because if you weren't feeling well and you had some ice cream, you felt better. So we definitely believe that it's medicinal. And that's it. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Let's see now, turn off my share. I don't know how to do that.
Give me 1 second. I think I can tell it to stop sharing.
That was terrific, Dr. Varner. I'm going to split early and go up to the dairy. Um, Fear the Turtle is my favorite, but we did have a question that I noted just a minute ago on how far is it to walk? I lost it. How far is it to walk from lot 1? Was it?
Lot 1.
I think,
Half mile.
yeah, it wouldn't be that far, and you'd walk off your ice cream on the way back. So,
There's a bit of a hill coming from lot 1. Going up because Stamp Student Union's on a little bit of a hill.
yeah, yeah. Len Carey has a hand up. Yes, sir.
Yes, my question is related to that. I'd worked with the land grant system for a while and spent. I didn't cover anywhere as near as many dairies as you did, but they were always a highlight of getting out to Michigan, to Purdue,
Mhm.
and such. But my question deals with College Park, and I used to stop at the Turner Hall for ice cream every chance I could. I lived in the area,
Me too.
still do, and my wife, who grew up in College Park, remembered sitting on the brick wall there, eating ice cream many days, and feet dangling over the wall. Um, and I also remember on Father's Day, the city of College Park, I think, in the university used to sponsor, I think, free ice cream for dads or something like that. But then suddenly in 2014, the dairy moved from Turner Hall to the Stamp Union, and with the advent of the Purple Line coming through, became absolutely inaccessible to anybody with no connection to the university. I mean, I've seen the dairy store at the basketball games and things like that, but otherwise, it's not anywhere near the community resource. What possessed the university to move that from Turner Hall away from Route 1 to the Stamp Union, making it inaccessible to anybody but students and faculty?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a faculty member, you don't always know how administrators make decisions. You're just told that what the decisions are. It's our understanding that the university wanted that specific space because of its accessibility to be used as a welcome center, that it was underutilized as a dairy sales room, as an ice cream store. So the community engagement, like you described, the town and gown kind of engagement that you described, was given up on, unfortunately. I'm sure the university administrators and dining services who run the place would point to that the sales of ice cream in the student union, because the students are there, that's where the students are, have quadrupled over since they moved up there. So I believe they view it as a success. Did
Of
that
course.
answer your question, Len?
Yeah, well, sort of, yes. I mean, my answer was, of course, it's looked at as a success, but it's, oh, thank you.
Alan, do you want to say what you just put in the chat? The little known fact?
Yeah. Hi there. Little known fact is that this would have been back in the 90s when the dairy store was at Turner Hall. I used to work for the apiary at University of Maryland and process their honey, and we would sell it out at dairy store. That's the only way you could buy it. And I was known as the honey man every time I went there to deliver the honey there and get an ice cream and lunch. I enjoyed those days.
Do you still claim that to be known as the honey man?
Only by, I don't know if they all retired yet, but the ladies that used to work there, the senior ones would still remember me as that. Yeah.
Well, Alan, by coincidence, my wife, who retired about a year ago, worked in the business office of entomology. And
Oh,
so they still process the honey, and they still market it and sell it, though more kind of mail order sort of thing, and
uh-huh.
at Maryland Day.
Okay. And what
I'll
was your
tell
wife's name?
Eileen Jewison.
Eileen.
She worked there about
Mm,
15 years.
okay. Yeah, because I stopped working at the entomology department probably, early 2000s, perhaps.
Mhm.
Yeah, early
Mhm.
two.
Early to mid 2000s. Yeah.
Did you know Bill Katsarelis in
Oh,
the?
yeah, very well. He's my
Yeah,
buddy.
well, Bill was her boss. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Honey's still available for those who are interested.
Uh-huh.
Marianne, there are a couple of additional questions in the
Yeah,
chat.
and I can't find the chat on my
Oh.
screen.
Well, let me
So,
just, do you want me to read them?
yeah, please,
So
Lisa.
Mark Graham says, Dr. Varner, that he heard that the Naval Academy has a dairy farm in Anne Arundel. Do you know of it, and do they have ice cream?
Yes, I do know of it, and no, they don't.
They don't. Okay.
There was a time before pasteurization was common, that raw milk was the way things were handled. And it was decided that the cadet plebes in the Naval Academy, plebes maybe,
Mhm.
I don't think they're called cadets, that they needed good quality fresh milk. And so that the Naval Academy dairy in there was established and run for a number of years, maybe 5 decades or something like that. They processed the milk there locally, and they never sold it, but they consumed it on campus. The cattle were sold off because they could buy good quality milk otherwise. They never made ice cream out of it. It is now an organic dairy, or excuse me, an organic farm run as a demonstration kind of farm for that.
Lisa,
Okay.
I can see them now.
Okay.
Another question, Dr. Marr, is there a vaccine for bird flu for cows, cattle?
Yes and no. There are vaccines for bird flu for poultry. The one for cattle is not widely used, and there is one for people. The one for people is being ramped up, and the production of it is being ramped up using the COVID style manufacturing approach. And so I think we're going to have enough of that on hand if that becomes a serious pandemic. Though this hasn't, well, I suppose there's maybe 20 or 30 people in the US who've been infected with humans who have been infected with bird flu. Most of those have not been serious. But the big infections with bird flu with the highly pathogenic strain have been in China. The mortality rate is 40%. That means 40% of the people who get infected die.
Wow.
So there's real concern about that. If you've ever been on a dairy farm, they often have, they want fresh air through the barn for the cows. And so that means birds can get in there quite easily. And the birds, the wild bird population, they consider now avian influenza to be endemic in the wild bird population, meaning it's affects all species and is all over and is beyond the ability to control that way. So you've got cats or dogs on a farm, and there's a sick bird or a weak bird, and so the cat gets an easy lunch and then gets infected with the avian influenza, and then it gets into the cows. I guess I would add one more caution. I hope none of you drink raw milk, but right now, drinking raw milk is a real risk for the avian influenza. One cow would produce enough, based on the research results, to infect 8 million people. The milk from one cow one day would infect 8 million people with highly pathogenic avian influenza. So,
Wow.
it's
Actually,
scary.
that actually answered a question. The other one related to that, bird flu what is the status of surveillance testing for cattle on the farm, in the farm, and the workers that come in contact with the cattle? Is there testing?
There isn't required testing. The only required testing is if a cow is going across state lines. So interstate transport. That requirement could be easily established by the powers that be and implemented. The Maryland Department of Agriculture going in and saying we need to test all of the cows, they're a little gun shy about that, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take off my scientist hat and put on my regular human being hat and say, if you go out into the dairy areas, you see a lot of COVID denier indications, Trump signs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they would get in real trouble, the Maryland Department of Agriculture, if they implemented that. Now, if a dairy farm worker gets symptoms of it, do they tell people that they've been exposed to cows, and do the doctors then test for it? Yeah, probably, at least in some states. So Michigan is proactive on that. Minnesota's proactive on that. Wisconsin, Colorado, Texas, New Mexico. Those are all really proactive on that. Maryland is taking the ostrich approach.
I remember in the old days going through customs in England, if not other places, when mad cow disease was such a big deal, and they wanted to know if you'd been on a dairy farm while you were in the country. And I never had been. I don't know if they isolated you or what, but maybe something like that would start again. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be. I know when I traveled internationally, I typically went to a dairy farm no matter what country I went to,
Yeah.
and I threw away a pair of shoes every trip.
Mhm, mhm. We have another question about the vegan options, and for ice cream. And has the university done much research on the using alternative milk like oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, those kinds of things?
No, we don't have an active research program in dairy products anymore. So no. The fat that you use for ice cream and the flavor that comes from that is comes from well, from dairy, obviously, and you can't just substitute the fat from oat milk or whatever kind of milk into that, because that is they just add a plain vegetable fat. So they don't pretend to make it out of those kinds of milks. They just go for the vegan ice cream that you see is directly with fat and other flavors.
You have to go to Starbucks for those fancy milks in your latte, I guess.
I guess.
Uh, do we have any other questions? If not, Carter, do you want to? Oh, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm sorry. Yes. Lisa.
You have to unmute yourself, Lisa.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Oh, but you
So
put it in there.
I've got, yeah, I put it in the chat. How are ice cream flavors selected on campus? And if we campaign to get a certain flavor, like Hyattsville's honey or something like that, how likely would it be that the university adopted it? And also, I wanted to ask Marianne what flavor Fear the Turtle is.
Let Dr. Varner go first.
Okay, because I don't know what Fear the Turtle, I don't know what flavors are in that. Good.
My
I'm glad you can
goodness.
answer that. Lisa, to get an ice cream that way, I think your chances are good
Ah,
because they're creative. So I would go in two ways. Whoever is your contact on campus for town and gown, get them in the same room as the key person in dining services who handles ice cream.
okay.
Lisa,
And
that would-
they have the technical equipment and all of that kind of stuff to be able to make them. It's just a matter of making the ice cream and tasting it and testing it and those kind of things and then promoting it. But if
I'm just,
within the university system, the way to motivate people, to get people motivated, is to bring a little bit of influence from administration. So the town and gown people, whoever handles that in campus administration, in the vice president's office or the president's office, get them in the same room as that, and have a plan to what you're going to do with the ice cream, how that's going to help town versus gown things.
okay, that's great.
Lisa, do you know Gloria Aparicio Blackwell? I'd start with her.
I don't,
And
but
there is a whole new division that is in community engagement. They've raised it to a vice president level. And the new person, I think, is a dean. I'm not sure what her title is, but she's just started. So the university is really committed to town and gown and community engagement.
mhm.
I think so too. And
Yeah. Yeah, and for
the
those of us that have lived here for 50 years, it is very refreshing,
sure.
very refreshing.
You got to remember that President Pines, the current president, is he's been on campus a long time. He was a faculty member, he was a department head, he was a dean, now he's president, and he believes in community engagement.
Great.
Lisa, I'll send you Gloria's contact information.
That'd be
Um,
great. And I'm not necessarily going for a Hyattsville flavor, but something like
We can work on that.
corridor conversation
Corridor
chocolate or
conversations,
something.
absolutely. Fear the Turtle is sort of vanilla based. It's got lots of caramel and it's got pecans and possibly a few little chocolate chips in there. For those who
Okay.
can't decide, it's got a little of everything. It's wonderful.
Okay, great.
Let's see.
There was a question about, do we have a mid-Atlantic and local culture for ice cream like they do in New England? I would say it's different. Here in DC, for example, there is I would say, a pretty good culture of ice cream. With small shops and new flavors and pushing away from that. You see a little more of that in every nook and cranny of New England. But that's because of the concentration. You see it in the bigger cities. In the suburbs here, we don't see it so much.
I'm just trying to think, some celebrity just opened an ice cream shop on Tenley Circle. That got a lot of hype. I don't know. We probably should have some kind of Old Bay ice cream, Maybe we should work on that to give us a little more stature as an ice cream state.
Right.
Sure wanted to know if I've ever had Brusters, and
Roasters.
the answer to that is no. But I always like trying new ice cream flavors. Or not flavors, but companies. The one that's marketed here locally now that is my favorite is a West Coast ice cream, Tillamook. It's an Oregon-based cooperative, and yeah, Tillamook is really good.
Tillamook is the name of it. Tillamook.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
If I can chime in for just a second.
Sure.
Lon Williams here. Ruth Arbuckle survived her husband Wendell by 20 years. And they, at the time, in their later years, they were had houses in University Park, but also down in a place called Scientist Cliffs in Calvert County on the western shore of the bay. And Ruth Arbuckle pretty much decamped to Scientist Cliffs after Wendell's death. She became a very close friend of my mother, who also lived in Scientist Cliffs. In addition to writing the additional book and recipes on ice cream, Ruth also, they maintained family connections with children and grandchildren, and I believe great-grandchildren in the Columbia, Missouri area. So going back to their early connections to ice cream out there. But she had a great-grandson that she used to write letters to about all the animals that she saw along the Chesapeake Bay. And that ended up getting pulled together into a book called A Chesapeake Bay Year, a children's book that my mother illustrated. And the universality of Ruth was one credit that through a mutual friend, that book about the Chesapeake Bay got translated and published in Japan, got published in Japanese. So she had wide-ranging reach, and not just in ice cream.
She and her husband created an endowment. She's from Missouri, and originally, and he met her. Wendell met Ruth there in Columbia, and they started an endowment for a dairy sales room and manufacturing plant there. And anyway.
I saw that, Lisa. Do we dare call on him?
Yes, please.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm late. I had that on the calendar, but then my stepbrother was visiting from out of town and I lost track of time. But here I am, and it's so lovely to join at this point in time and see you, Flan, talking about the Chesapeake Bay year, which is
There you go.
Yeah, wow.
was illustrated by Annie, but she went under a pseudonym of Hannah. Because
Her other name, yes.
yeah, so I'm sorry I missed the presentation, but it's so nice to see you all talking about my family.
It is recorded, it is being recorded, so you can, like next week, Carter will send a link to it, so you can definitely catch it.
Are you a grandson, great-grandson?
I am Ruth and Wendell's grandson. And then Flan was talking about our son Hector, who was
Right.
book was written to. So at that point, he was the only great grandchild. Now there's more, but my grandmother passed away in 2007, so I wasn't able to meet my youngest brother's kids.
In her later years, she often went to old folks' homes, senior centers, and the like, and led singing sessions. She was a wonderful pianist and song leader, even though her eyesight was failing. And quite often she was leading singings for people who were 20 and 30 and perhaps even 40 years or junior, who were considering themselves senior. But she was ageless. She was an amazing woman.
Flan, if you don't, do you mind if I share a little bit of another story to build on your story?
Sure.
Please.
So Flan was just mentioning and also Dr. Varner was mentioning the creamery at University of Missouri that they helped to reestablish. Like my grandfather thought that it was heresy, having worked at the dairy at the University of Maryland for so long, he thought it was just heresy that a land-grant university could exist without having a creamery. And the University of Missouri, where he got his PhD, had let their creamery go. And so they really made it one of their missions in retirement was to reestablish that creamery. And they did that. And interestingly, so I'm a professor at Iowa State University now. I'm a rural sociology professor. One of my associate deans, who was a food science professor, still is a food science professor, she was at the University of Missouri when my grandparents were working on establishing the creamery. And the same thing had happened here at Iowa State, that the creamery had gone by the wayside in the 70s or 80s. And when her name is Ruth McDonald, when she came to Iowa State, she thought, they did it at Missouri, we can do it here. And so she hired a couple of people to start working on that project, and we just reestablished the creamery. I think it's been 4 years, maybe 3 years, that the ISU creamery has now been back. And so it was kind of a ripple effect of,
Right.
The University of Maryland creamery having been such a really important part of my grandparents' lives. And then that went to, reestablishing the Missouri creamery, and now the Iowa State University creamery is back in business. And it's so popular. So, yeah.
Does the Iowa State Creamery have a name like Buck's Ice Cream?
No, it's just called I think it's just called the ISU Creamery. It doesn't have kind of a namesake. But
Do you know what Buck's, what's the derivation of why that was chosen?
Absolutely. So my grandfather, it's a derivation of Arbuckle, but when my grandfather was a PhD student, actually that was kind of his nickname when he was a kid, but certainly when he was a PhD student, they called him Buck. And so he just was known as Wendell Buck Arbuckle. And so when it came time to name the creamery, they just called it Buck's Ice Cream.
No, that was one of the many college ice cream stores that I've been to, and it's got good ice cream. I say this with in a positive manner. It's a little small hole in the wall place, but the manufacturing side for training of students and industry people is quite large and much more expansive than just the sales room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally true. And it's definitely, whenever I meet people, younger people who have graduated from Mizzou, it's infamous for contributing to the freshman 15, the 15 game, because that's where they go.
It was interesting. We was walking across campus. This was after I had retired and was doing from Maryland, and was doing was employed by the American Association of Research Universities. And the point of the story was Brady Deaton was walking me around campus at the time, and we had to stop by Buck's to get an ice cream.
Nice. Yeah. So did you know my grandfather? You were on campus about the
I
time?
came to campus in '81, so I met him, but no, to answer your question. I was the last faculty member hired in dairy science, and but we never went to a faculty meeting together or anything like that.
So it's interesting. Whenever I meet a dairy scientist, they always say Arbuckle. You know, my textbook, my first textbook that I studied in ice cream, it was called Ice Cream by Dr. Wendell Arbuckle. Are you kidding? And I'm like, yes, indeed. And we actually have a faculty member here, Don Bites. I don't know if you know him, Mark, but he's a dairy scientist here at Iowa State University who's been here for 50 plus years. But he remembers meeting my grandfather back in the 70s when he was a young fellow. And Max Rothschild. I don't know if you remember Max Rothschild. He was there at University of Maryland for a while.
I certainly do. He was here at the time I was here. We were sorry to lose him.
Okay, well, he's my next door neighbor here in Ames, Iowa.
Well, please give him regards from Mark Varner.
I sure will. Thanks.
Fabulous. We couldn't have paid for a better. That's just terrific. Are you in Iowa now?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. You wouldn't want to commute from here. Oh, that's wonderful. What a legacy. That's just delightful.
I do spend a lot of, my mom lives in Washington, D.C. still. And we still had the Scientist Cliffs house that Fawn was talking about back until 2022, and we finally had to sell it because I'm in Iowa and my other brother is in Oxford, Ohio, and my other brother is in Los Angeles, and my dad is in Boulder, so we just couldn't take care of it anymore. So,
Yeah.
But I did go to Scientist Cliffs this summer to visit old friends because that's like where I really did my best growing up, was going and visiting my grandparents down in Scientist Cliffs. Another little story, I hope I'm not boring you and dominating the conversation.
Oh.
On the back porch at the house down there at Scientist Cliffs, there was, my grandparents had a big chest freezer, like the really big ones, not a small one. And since he did a lot of ice cream tasting for different Baskin Robbins and all different Seal Test and other ice cream manufacturers, he would bring back these 5-gallon buckets that had been cut down, so they were maybe only about that tall instead of that tall, but they were stacked up in the freezer. And whenever I would have friends over, he would get this little twinkle in his eye, and he'd say something like, "Do you want like some ice cream?" And of course, what kid says no to ice cream? But just and I was kind of in on the joke, because there's very few kids that have opened up a chest freezer and seen it as full of ice cream as that was, and they would just, their mouths would go agape and their eyes would just be like, and we would have as much ice cream as we wanted to eat. And it was, for me, it was just super cool to have like Dr. Ice Cream be my grandfather and like feeding me and all my friends as much ice cream as we could eat. It was great.
Well, one of the questions that came up was about one of the flavors your grandfather had developed and that wasn't very popular, and one of them was grass, and another one was alfalfa.
Mhm.
And these were in the 60s, 70s when he is quoted as saying, "I can make an ice cream flavor out of anything." And so he did those kind of flavors even if they weren't popular.
He would
I
work.
wish he'd gotten into lemongrass. He probably could have done great things with lemongrass.
Yeah.
I think the least favorite that we ever had was corn, but it was just because like the little niblets of corn were so chewy, and it was yeah. We had that, and that kind of went bad in the freezer, but everything else was pretty good that I tried.
I like the vegetable inclusion because that really does reinforce the health food aspect of ice cream. Like chocolate's a vegetable, it grows on a bush. So, I figure any way we can do this. That's terrific. Did you get any shark's teeth when you were at Scientist Cliffs?
Well, I went down to the beach. There's not as much beach as when I was a kid, sea level wise and all. But I did find a fossilized skate's tooth and some old bones. And I was only there for one day visiting friends. But yeah, I went down to the beach and I found a skate's tooth, or a ray tooth. So, yeah.
That's such a wonderful area and nobody knows about it. It's just terrific. I don't suppose the ice cream freezer is still on the back porch, is it?
No, no, my grandparents donated that to the young people's they call them the teen group. It's called the Junior Cliff Dwellers, and they do an auction every year. And so I think it was after my grandfather passed away, and there was just no ice cream to fill it up, and so my grandmother donated it. So, but it's still vivid in my memory, that's for sure.
Dave, did you say you're a sociologist?
I am.
You have two other sociologists here on this
Really?
Zoom.
Great. Ooh.
David and Mady.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, I'm in good company then.
I think so.
What
So
were you-
Note about the global reach. I worked on a project about 20 years ago with a scientist who was from Columbia, Missouri, and we met up in Amazonia in Ecuador, and we were kind of comparing notes just to get to know each other. And I raised the connection between Maryland and Missouri with the Arbuckle family, and immediately got a big smile and a rise out of him because he took his family to a shop that was still serving up Arbuckle named ice cream flavors. So
Awesome. That's great. Well, I'm so excited that you all are, celebrating 100 years of ice cream at Maryland. It's just such a cool thing.
We'd celebrate even more uproariously if we could get there. We have the Purple Line is this new above ground thing that has destroyed the area. Anyway, it has 5 stops on campus, but in order to do that, they've had Campus Drive closed forever. And now Dr. Varner says you can't even get in by Regents Drive. So I don't know. We'll park in lot 1 and we'll walk over. Although lot 1 is pretty torn up too. But I think that's where we're all headed.
can we charter a bus? Let's see.
Yeah, right.
Good. Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe we could
university-
include, maybe Marianne, we could include a trail walk, a trail map in with the recording so that people know the best way right now to get to the ice cream. That would be great. I don't know whether Carter and a combination of people that know the campus well could help us do that.
And how
Also
close to
probably-
the Purple Line stop will the ice cream be?
I
One of the
suppose-
stops is right near the student union.
Yeah.
Right near the student union. That's
Yeah,
great.
5 stops on campus. Can you imagine? Well, we'll see. The
Well,
kids aren't-
it's a step forward because the campus didn't originally want Metro anywhere near it. So
Indeed.
years ago.
Decades ago.
Well,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sure there's something on, Carter, if there's something on the Maryland website, they always put in maps and let you know what's closed and stuff. In fact, Dr. Pines jokes about how he has to call the police department every morning to see how he can get to work because, the road that you went on yesterday is closed today.
today.
So, and for us townies, the same thing. You think you're going to go out Moet Drive. No, you're not. It's very exciting time. We need ice cream to soothe our fevered brow.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm interested in how we get this quiz so we could earn the ice cream.
Yeah, Carter, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so we've got a link that I just put into the chat. So if you click on that, it'll take you to a survey form and just fill out. There are 8 questions, all multiple choice. Please make sure you put in your email address and your name. And what we're going to do is 5 of the people who get all the questions right, we will make sure that we reach out to you to find out how to get you your coupon for a scoop of ice cream from the Maryland Dairy.
I'm going to see if Dr. Varner. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. As a retired college professor, I had to give a quiz. I'm gonna give a
Love it.
lecture.
Then Mr. Arbuckle, you may not answer, you may not take the quiz. I'm sorry. You would ace it.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, this was great. And I loved having this conversation for Carter Conversations, the fact that we could all talk to each other. I think that's terrific. It's the fun part of living in this town, this area. You never know who you're going to meet. Dr. Varner, we know how to get you, so we will keep in touch.
Very
And
good.
we thank you so very much.
Thank you.
we look forward to seeing you all in August, and I am happy. I am the keeper of the coupons, so for the ice cream. So I will be in touch with some of you. But do it fast because they're very tempting. They're right here. We technically have 5, but I may go to 4 really quickly. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you in August.
Great to meet you all.
Bye,
August.
everyone.
Bye.